Hello, my friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Luiz Lima here in Orlando, Florida today. You are on Kardec Radio, and this is Spiritism, a closer look. And we do this program every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So here we are. And in this program, we're going to take a closer look at Spiritism and morality. Morality is a big subject in 2026. Spiritism's essential objective is humankind's moral evolution. So, that's like the main focus of Spiritism. The word moral, just the word, brings, I would say initially, it brings to mind a set of rules, maybe a set of principles, or a system of conduct and behavior, but subject to these external rules. As a consequence, we ask ourselves things like, what we should do or not. What should I do? Is this right? Is this wrong? What does society expect from me? You see, these things, and the answers are not universal. They depend on the culture you're inserted in. It depends on the country, on the city, on a lot of different things. So, facing or understanding moral or morality as, or attached, better saying, to a set of rules or principles becomes something fragmented, because something could be right for you, wrong for me, and vice versa. So, a general definition of morality could be something like this. I'm going to say this in a relaxed definition. We could say that morality can be understood as the capacity to distinguish between right and wrong. And one layer above that, to choose the good, even when it requires effort, even when no one is looking. That's a global, relaxed definition of morality. Now, to establish that something is right or wrong, we need to have a clearly established reference. For example, when I say people in yellow shirts are right and those in different colors are wrong, the first question is based on what? Why are you saying this? What are you using as a base? What is your reference? So in our societies, we use references as, the laws that we humans write for the city, for the group, for the country, nation, whatever it is. And those laws become the reference we call social markers. So they become our reference. That's what we should go by. Again, that depends on the reference. I can establish a reference that makes me being right on a yellow shirt and you being wrong on a blue shirt. Or the vice, and you can say, no, I'm going to establish that blue shirts are right and yellow shirts are wrong. So you see, it's very complicated because the reference cannot be a moving target. But that's what usually we do. And that's what we've seen throughout the history of humanity. Now, for Spiritism, morality is not simply obedience to external rules. It goes far beyond the idea of obeying rules. It's in Spiritism, morality, it's an inner process of transformation where we're going to, through the process, abandon selfishness and bring in generosity. Understanding is going to replace anger. Humility is going to replace pride. Compassion is going to replace indifference, and on and on and on. Patience is going to replace impatience, and so forth. Now, to accomplish this transition, it requires effort on our part. This does not come as a divine decree that shows up in the mailbox tomorrow morning. You've accomplished everything. There's no such thing. It requires effort because morality, at its best, it's still not fully automated in our perispirit. It's not fully automated. It's not like instinct. No. Every time we have to deal with something that could be right or wrong, we have to think, stop and think. It's not automated. Where is my reference? My reference says this. Okay, so I'm going to do this. But really, in theory, I want to do the other side. You see, there's a lot of things that cause this inner dialogue, this inner turmoil, because the references are moving target. So a good example to understand morality, and that's what we're going to talk about now, is the theory of the desert island. Sometimes we want to, just leave everything behind, go to a desert island. We don't want to be bothered by, people, responsibility, bills to pay, traffic. We just want to be doing nothing, literally. So we have this desire or pseudo desire to go into a desert island. So if you think about the theory of the desert island, so now I'm there. There's no one, absolutely no one. It's me and myself. In the desert island, there is no stealing. I wouldn't be able to steal anything. There's something in there, just pick. There's a rock on the floor. I just picked the rock. I didn't steal the rock from anyone because there's not a soul in there. There's nobody there. I wouldn't be able to take anything from anyone. Does that make me honest? In the desert island, there is no dishonesty, no cheating. We wouldn't be able to go after someone else's romantic partner to satisfy the ego. In the desert island, our attitudes do not invoke any vices or repeated wrongdoings because it doesn't make sense. However, it doesn't mean that we are perfect. In the desert island, I don't steal anything, but that doesn't make me honest necessarily. The vices are all latent. They're latent. They're potentially there. They simply do not get exposed in the desert island. Now, we get out of the desert island, back in societal life. That's a whole different story. That's where relationships develop. So now there's people around. Now there is somebody that I could potentially steal something from or hurt in some other way. The vices are there. So depending on my morality, I could start doing things that are not right. It isn't the case where in the desert island, I was perfect. Now I'm doing things wrong. No. I've always had the possibility for doing something wrong. Now it's different because I'm being exposed to situations that make it more probable, but potentially it was always in there. So how do we improve our morality to reach perfection? That's the purpose of relationships, to uproot the points of low morality that we have not yet transcended. I'm going to have to deal with people that bring envy to the surface. I'm going to have to deal with coworkers that brings my impatience afloat. So these vices that we have potentially inside are going to come out as we go along developing relationships. That's what societal life is for. There is no meaning, no purpose in being on the desert island. It's only imaginary. It's never going to be like that. So through these relationships, of all types of relationships, co-workers, colleagues, and romantic relationships, business relationships, all types, they are going to bring to the surface the points of low morality that I need to work on to transcend those. That's the path to perfection. So when we look at morality from the Spiritist point of view, it becomes more interesting because Spiritism calls for a fresh look into the subject of morality. We need to put a fresh look, fresh lenses to look at this thing and kind of abandon the baggage that we bring around the idea of moral standards and morality. Moral and morality are connected to the development of the spirit, not to a rule that somebody one day created that might have been created 500 years ago and doesn't even apply anymore today. Our thoughts and actions, our feelings, our attitudes, our choices, all these things are transformed as we evolve towards a universal harmony under the law of God. So from the Spiritist perspective, instead of looking at humans as people, we should look from a different angle. We are immortal spirits. When we look at people as spirits, incarnated spirits, the result is different than we simply look at them as just people, that one day are going to die, disappear, and that's it. So that changes the meaning of morality. Instead of focusing on the old, am I allowed to do this thing? The focus shifts to something like, who am I becoming? What am I doing with this opportunity? Who am I actually? You see, even the inner dialogue changes when we start seeing the others as immortal spirits rather than just people, physical bodies. So the focus will change from outside, focusing on the law, to something inside, focusing on the self, ourselves. Over time in societal life, things change. Laws can and will change. Social markers will change. Opinions will change because the world and all of us evolve. But the fundamental principles of morality remain connected to something that is unchangeable and immutable, the law of God. The law of God is not a moving target. It's just there, forever and ever. We cannot adjust or tailor the law of God to our needs. It doesn't make sense. So with time, gradually, after trial and error, repeatedly, we are led to develop morality, intelligence, understanding, responsibility, love, compassion. As we recognize throughout the journey, as we recognize moral weaknesses, we're going to start responding with awareness, repentance, effort, renewal. Let me do different because I already learned that if I do this, there's going to be suffering. I don't want to suffer, so let me do this. This time I'm going to be different. So it's a journey. It's a gradual journey. Morality is this constant improvement that's going to take us to perfection. So moral progress is a lot more than simply avoid punishment established by the law. It's a lot more than that. Falling and failing, by the way, are part of the journey. Spiritism does not condemn anybody, anyone, or anything. Quite the contrary. When we make a mistake, Spiritism invites us to understand it, repair what can be repaired, learn from it, and go on, continue on the journey. So, what is the moral of reference that Spiritism teaches us? It is the moral of Jesus. He taught by example. He taught through example by abiding to the same law. He demonstrated everything he taught. He taught forgiveness, reconciliation, humility, compassion, service, serving others. He taught love of God, love our neighbor, love our enemies. That's a big one. That's tough. If you do not understand morality at this level, if you think morality comes from a written law, written somewhere in the past by a few people, then love your enemies becomes very challenging. Now, when you look from the point of view of us being spirits, immortal spirits, that changes everything because our enemies are going to be with us here and here and after this life. At one point, of course, we're going to reconcile. And that's what Jesus proposes, right? Why not reconcile now while they're here with us? A lot easier. So we will only learn the moral of reference when we practice, not reading books. Knowing the good and doing the good are different things. Different things. Our attitudes. You see, by the way, I'm talking about Jesus here. He kind of challenges us to consider how we speak to our family. There's a moral, there's a right way and a wrong way to speak to our family, to treat our coworkers, to behave when nobody is watching, to respond in a certain way to those who hurt us. Are we in favor of division or unification? Do we consider criticizing before understanding? Or should I do the other way around? See, all these things he came to teach us. Would I rather condemn rather than assist? Or the other way around? So He came to teach us these things, but he also practiced these things. And it takes us a long time to learn? Yes, it does. Why? Because this, what he taught, is not automated in our perispirit. We need to make these things automated in a certain way that doing good becomes a habit. Doing evil things or wrong things is not even going to cross our minds. It's going to be out of the radar one day. Our attitudes have moral consequences. We all bear free will. However, responsibility is attached to free will. It comes with it. As immortal spirits, we are destined to perfection. We know that. To get to perfection, we need to have experienced everything possible. Good and bad, the worst, the best, in all types and different combinations and possibilities. That's how we perfect. So I'm going to learn morality, and one day we're going to be perfect, then we can teach morality. We can only teach what we learn. So when we get to perfection, then we have reached the highest level of morality possible. Jesus caliber morality, if you will. So for Spiritism, morality is universal because it's not centered in a set of rules written by man in a different time. It is universal because it never changes. It's immutable, unchangeable. Why? Because the source, which is God, is unchangeable, immutable. If I write a law 10 years from now, it can change. I can say, oh my God, I need to do this differently. Or I wrote this thing 10 years ago, I need to make an adjustment. That's what we do with our laws or our groups, cities, countries. We keep changing and adjusting the law because we change. The society changes and needs adjustments. So for Spiritism, morality is universal. It uses a more philosophical concept, which approaches to the concept of ethics. Moral can be different in different parts of the world. What fits in good moral standards here might not be the same in someplace else in the world. Spiritism calls for us to understand that morality is universal. There's a law above all. And again, what is the moral that we use for that reference? The moral of Jesus. He came to teach and he came to show, and he did. We could spend a lot more time talking about morality and spiritism. It's a long subject, but this is maybe a warm-up to a series of other talks that we can bring here. Thank you very much for being with us today. And again, Spiritism, a closer look. We'll be back on next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.